It's a very ambitious film. I think it was extremely challenging for everyone to make, and I think the results they speak for themselves. So for me, I'm a small part in it. I think it's a beautiful testimony to Marie, and I'm really thrilled about that. I think that in a time where warfare continues, it's as imperative as ever for war correspondents, especially photographers, anyone who's going into war-torn countries, to be able to access the stories, the truth that must come from these places. It is a heroic thing to do. It's incredibly dangerous and courageous. And even this year alone, 26 war correspondents have been killed. 500,000 Syrians have died. And we have more migrants, more refugees than at any other time in the history of the world. So I think this is a very, very important film for people to see, and it will open their minds, it will open their eyes, and it will remind them of the important work that war correspondents do in telling the truth about terrible situations around the world.
I hope they go and they read her work. There are books published on her work and her writing and everything from the very beginning. I hope that they go and start reading and watching the news with more interest and see what it really takes to gather this information, that it isn't fake news. People are giving their lives. Since 1992, more than 1,300 journalists have been targeted and murdered. And that is, it's something profound, and it has to change. And I hope they start to realize that we're all people. Like, we may be different creeds, colors from around the world. We are still people, and people, whenever there's a war zone, there are people that are suffering.
I think there's a real issue across the world with people that are sort of ignorant to stuff, and if it's happening in a million, thousands of miles away from them, it doesn't affect them day to day. They don't care about it, and that's wrong, And also, I think it takes this type of journalism to really inform people of what's happening, and it's again a timely movie because the state of journalism now and fake news and what we perceive to be truth, an opinion becomes truth based on nothing, and I think this is a homage to real journalism, people who actually went to these places and got to the bottom of it. When I felt reading the script was I got a greater respect for people like Marie and Paul and Remy, and you need a certain madness, I think, to do what they do, but also huge courage and belief, and you're driven by just the capacity to tell and the want to tell the truth. It's getting a good response, and I think that's only fair to the memory of Marie and Remy and all the other journalists who've died in similar situations. This is a homage to them, and it means something to all of us. We're all went quite a emotional, cathartic journey on this one, and so to be here and to have it being received well, and it's a good thing. To have the real guy I'm portraying there, omnipresent, and he's quite a character. He's a brilliant guy to have around, and he's become a very dear friend of mine now. So yeah, for me, amazing. Even small things like his accent and stuff, it felt like cheating having him there. But also just the insight, and a lot of the things we're depicting in the movie are pretty close to what we're trying to make it as authentic as possible. And the only person who really knew what those situations were like were Paul, so he was with us. So for Rosamund, I think to pick his brains about all those moments was a massive thing.
And to be able to tell, the story of this incredibly courageous woman who risked everything to shed light on dark corners of the world. And I think it's especially timely right now, given the state of journalism, given the fact that journalists are being targeted, and I hope the film reaches as wide an audience as possible. I think we as civilians read articles, read headlines, look at photos, and don't necessarily understand what it took, to get onto our newspaper or our iPhone or however we're consuming media these days. And so it's an exploration of that, but it's also an exploration of courage and you know, the enormous sacrifices that journalists make to tell these stories. You know, my background is as a journalist, as a documentary filmmaker. You know, I've been in dangerous places. I've been shot at. I've been in meth labs. I've been in torture chambers, and for me, it's, you know, it's a very personal film. I felt those same weird, bizarre urges to go to these dangerous places that Marie did, and also, you know, those complicated, dark thoughts that happen when you get home. And so, you know, for me, I very much empathized with her experience and connected with her, even though I never was able to meet her. Roz was incredible. She put her entire heart and soul into this film, and you know, the way she came at the role was as if Marie was going after an article. You know, she spent so many months researching her and how she moved, how she held tension in her neck, how she smoked, obviously the accent. You know, she just did an amazing job at not just the physicality of embodying this role, but you know, mentally the anguish that Marie went through to do what she did.
One of the factors that changed how this country felt about the Vietnam War was the war correspondents' photography, especially during the Tet Offensive and the children escaping a village that had been napalmed. Those images were so powerful that it actually started to turn Americans against the war.
It's amazing to show it to people because, you know, we've put our heart and soul into this movie, and it seems to be that people are moved and are leaving the experience of watching it, you know, feeling something. And in this day and age, you know, isn't that all we can ask for, is that people feel, you know, in a sort of world where people are becoming numb. It's what Marie Colvin would have wanted, you know. That's what she wanted to do. She wanted to puncture the bubble with her writing, and I just hope that we, you know, maybe not everyone, but we'll puncture some bubbles. I think Matt has had an incredible career as a documentary maker, and he's gone into places very much like Marie, where other people might think were unthinkable places. He's gone into war zones. He's gone into meth labs. He's crossed borders illegally. He's done. I don't know if that's entirely true, but he's certainly crossed borders dangerously. And he's shared very, very difficult times with people who are fighting for the truth, very much as Marie Colvin spent her life trying to do, which is fight for the truth. I think his approach was to have the approach of a documentary maker, which is not only to show us how courageous and brilliant this woman was, but to get inside her head in a way that only the very, very sensitive observer can. I think that people will be inspired just by the dedication of one woman to a cause that you can't but admire. But I think they will also be moved by the fact that, you know, these stories are brought to us as we read the papers over our breakfast at a certain cost to those who write them. You know, I think we'll have a new, deeper appreciation of what it costs to campaign for the truth. I mean, you know, there are stories in our news right now that make that very, very clear. I think it will really put a spotlight on journalism and really show, you know, how brave these people are. But on another level, it will also show a woman and what the cost of putting your heart and soul into your number one passion is.